you too.
Dr. Meek.
Hi.
Can't believe it. So everybody, this is Mary Speckhard Lates, who lives somewhere like Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And and then this is Troy Millard, who lives sort of under my nose in Pittsburgh. And both of those places are where you're from too. Isn't that true?
For me, yep. Mm-hmm.
And you too, Troy, are you from Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I'm from Beaver Falls originally, so I'm not too far.
Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Family's
so
still there.
you both graduated from Geneva, you just told me, in 2011. And I know it was the same year because there's a wonderful picture of the three of us.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
When it's one of your birthdays. And I also want to know, were you in Christian Understanding of Life at the same time as each other?
I think so.
I think we were. Yeah, I think we were the same year.
Yeah.
Was it Old Main 20?
What was that?
Was it Old Main 20? Do you?
It wasn't. It wasn't in the basement room. No. It was upstairs.
Yeah, by the main chapel. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I think we were.
I have a visual recollection of toward the end of that class, Troy had his guitar, and it was just like leading worship in the middle of our last.
Yeah.
Did that happen?
That sounds right. I had forgotten that, but yes. Aw.
I remember that now. Yes.
True to form.
Yes.
So thank you for joining me. And why don't each of you say a little bit more about yourself, and then also tell how, your part in the Longing to Know story, if you can remember what it was like to read it and what difference it's made in your life. So that's supposed to be one question. I know I just expressed it. And Mary, why don't you go first? Sure. And then Troy, you can follow.
Yeah, so I was a philosophy major, and so even though I took a few years into it to read the book, like, taking philosophy 101 with you, I feel like it was already kind of in there. And then I also worked as your TA, so I, got a lot of in the classroom, out of the classroom, just exposure to everything. And my initial experience, I was thinking about this, and I definitely thought, oh yeah, no, this definitely makes sense. Like, of course we can't articulate how we ride a bike, but that doesn't mean we don't know it. And but looking back, I think at the time, I think I kind of did this thing where it was like, I understood it, but I didn't really get it till much later. So it's like the being on the way, but it was kind of like, oh, this is really cool information. And then I ended up like, basically every single paper I had in college, I always like found how you could see, Polanyi's vision of knowing and from to integration and all that stuff. Like literally like every paper, like in Russian Lit, I'm like, oh, Dostoevsky did this here. And in my master's thesis, I did it, even though it wasn't a philosophy degree, which, yeah, that's a whole other story. But yeah, so I definitely, and I also realized that in a lot of Christianity, they really hadn't understood this. And so, like my senior thesis was on foundationalism in Christianity. It's like, oh, they're looking for certain knowledge. And then I did a paper on the Truth Project from Focus on the Family, which basically straight up said, truth is propositional statements. And I was like, that's not right. Yeah, so I definitely resonated with it. But it wasn't until much later that it really, on a much deeper level, I realized the truth of it. And that's because post-college, post-grad school, I started to really, really struggle with mental health. The career plans I had for myself, like I just struggled with so much anxiety, so much doubt, and I just, could not figure out what was going on. And then eventually, actually just a few years ago was finally diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. And literally I'm going to this therapy where they talk about, certainty, the only certainty in life is death, and you need to develop confidence, and and you do exposure therapy, which is literally like you need to like embody what you know is true, even though your brain is telling you, nope, like we're not certain about this, so things could be really bad. And so ironically, when I was looking back at it later, I'm like, oh my gosh, all of this was right here in this book and in your following books. And I was like, darn it, if I had really understood what this meant, like maybe I could have saved myself like a lot of time in therapy. But I mean, it really, I mean, looking back over the book again and, just talking about how acts of knowing, like, they unlock a door and they like just the positive future manifestations, like that was exactly my experience. It was like, oh, like this makes sense. And other diagnoses I'd received, like they were partially true, but they weren't quite right. And yeah, and since then, like I've been doing, a lot better overall. And yeah, and it really saved my life, honestly, getting that diagnosis. And so yeah, so the book now just means even more to me, because it's like, oh, this is basically like, and actually, I guess this isn't in Longing to Know, but in your next book, you literally have a line about fundamentalism in Christianity leading to like obsessive compulsive disorder. I'm like, well, that's embarrassing. Should have realized that one. But yeah, so basically, I feel like I lived like OCD is essentially the extreme of this modern concept of knowledge. And it's like you're not 100% certain, so you better do this compulsion. And then they actually talked about how that undermines your confidence. And so so you just get caught up in this cycle of trusting certainty, which you'll never get, and you just increasingly do more and more compulsions. And it's the rigidity of it, like it's horrible, and it doesn't actually get you where you want to go. And so yeah, so basically it's really had a profound impact on my life.
And you're in a whole lot better place, though.
Oh, yes.
I don't think I understood the depth of what you were, and I don't think you understood either.
Oh, no. So yeah, not at all. So
by the way, I want to say, I think your face looks beautiful. I know you're also
Thanks.
But
no, I really appreciate that.
Just look whole and fresh and happy and healthy, and that's just
yeah. No, that's thank you. No, it's been a long journey. And also I think one of the effects on my life, actually, the parts about bodily sense and felt bodily needs. I just remember Philosophy 101, you kept talking about bodies and I was so uncomfortable, and I was like, why does she keep talking about bodies? This is weird. Like, I just prefer to never think about any of it. But that's kind of been a concurrent journey alongside was me realizing I had some serious health issues that eventually my body was like, you can't ignore this anymore. And so that's been a whole journey, and through different exercise and nutrition and therapy and stuff, that's really been healing too. And I thought of you the other day because I've been doing these workout programs to help better prepare for to help in pregnancy and delivery and postpartum. And I had a consultation, and the person's like, wow, like, she's like, you're really aware of your body. Like, you really have good body awareness. I was like, oh my gosh, like, like, if you had told me that, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it was like, yeah. So just like, that's the other aspect too, is, growing up, I had this very disconnected sense of, and yeah, so that's been hugely helpful to me too. And yeah, and I think it's a perfect example of the being on the way to knowing, and that, you know, sometimes you get the initial ideas, but it just takes a while for it to really come together and make sense in your life. And
yeah, that's great. That's great, Mary. I should say about Mary too, that she helped prepare Loving to Know for publication. It wasn't the index you worked on.
Yes.
It was a mess. I mean, that was, oh my something. But speaking of faces, Troy has shaved in honor of this, so we could see his beautiful face.
No, I just go through phases, you know, on the way to knowing whether or not I want to have a beard or not, you know, and my wife agrees.
Yeah, say a little bit more in response to the questions, Troy.
Yeah, Mary, that was beautiful. And
thanks,
so interesting,
Troy.
after years, obviously, of not being in class, you know, after we graduated and just seeing snippets on Facebook. I mean, talk about like knowledge and relationships. I mean, what social media has done since we graduated, and our ability to stay connected and to hear your story. That's really encouraging. And so I mean, my story was that I was the Christian ministry major who just could not get enough of philosophy, you know, and Dr. Meek and Dr. Fraser. And I just, you know, I started with 101 and then logic, and, you know, and I just kept going postmodernism, because I realized, I think deep down, is at the time, I mean, 18, 19, 20 years old, that there was just something fundamentally wrong with how we as Westerners process really all of life. And it comes down to, you know, our epistemology and kind of what we inherited in modernism. And I felt it back then. And so I just wanted to hear more. I wanted to learn more and read more and process. And I wanted, because in my thinking, I always had this calling to ministry and preaching. And how can I express the gospel and the scriptures if I don't even know how we know, and I don't even understand the philosophical current that's just under our age right now? And so I just kept coming back for more. And so I didn't make the philosophy major, but I got the minor. And so I know just enough to be dangerous and not teach anybody, which is good.
Well, and I also want to say, Troy, you know, you have been an example that I have used through all my teaching. Did you know this?
No,
because
I did not.
I can see you in the history of philosophy class, and let's say you were sitting beside Mary. You'd be kind of leaning toward her, and you'd be looking at me with this look of rapture on your face, and you would say, "This is awesome," and you'd turn to Mary and say, "Isn't it? I mean, isn't this just awesome?" And so I have said through the years to every class needs a Troy Miller.
Yeah, seriously.
Every teacher needs a Troy Miller. Anyway, that's not what we're supposed to be talking about, but I just had to say that.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm grateful to hear that. I mean, I was taken by it all, and just the way you presented. And I think, you know, the difference that what you were working with in Longing to Know and Christian understanding of life, like I think the framework you were bringing from the Polanyian standpoint was so fresh and different. And it was, I mean, like the example of the magic eye in the book, it was kind of like that the whole time, where, and as you said, Mary, I was so blurry and I didn't really understand it at the time, but I had a feeling that this was big. I actually went back and I was looking for my copy, and I realized I had given it to a close family friend not long after I read it, because she was one of my mom's best friends and was kind of struggling with her place in the world and, you know, knowing God and all of that. And so I was like, here's this book that I think would help. And, you know, I haven't seen it. So I actually went back and I ordered it on Kindle, and I was reading it. I was sick last week, so I was kind of, just even today, my wife joked, she said, "Are you cramming for the exam at the last minute?" I said, "No, I just wanted to refresh a little bit." And so, you know, so then I moved on, and I graduated, and I had a job in worship ministry for 6 years at a church where eventually my wife and I met. You know, we say that in 10 years, it's been 3 kids, 3 churches, and 3 houses. So we do things in threes. and it's been a whirlwind, and I did seminary in there, so I have my master's of divinity, and I'm now currently a church planter and young pastor who decided to plant a church at the beginning of a global pandemic. And so, I mean, as I was reading back over this and thinking through that story, I just couldn't help but think about this, like, we think we know, I had a mentor say, especially professionally in church planting, it's like, here's the modules and the lessons and the things you're going to learn and strategies and models. And he would always say, once the boots hit the ground and the bullets start flying, you throw the playbook out the window and it all goes out. And especially in an age like today. And so for me, this idea of, especially working in ministry with people and in my family and raising kids, that knowledge and truth is not something to be held on to and quantified necessarily, but it's deeper. It's, again, embodied. It's, I see it in my children all the time. You talk about reading in the book, and I thought about that, teaching my 8-year-old, my 5-year-old how to read in these moments where it's like it lights up. It's just reminding me of the beauty of the gospel. I was finding myself just kind of like tearing up again looking at the book, because I remember you saying specifically in a class, you said, people can't, in the Western world, we can't even hear the gospel. People can't even hear it.
No.
Right. And so I want people to hear the gospel. And so to tell them, well, to hear that, you've got to have these propositions and this, train of logic, and you have to be able to solidify it to where you can hold on to it for yourself and know 100% with certainty. And it's like, but that's not how life works. So why is that how our faith and how the gospel works? So, I could go on and on, but it was one of those turning points for me, reading and being in those classes, that I think laid a foundation for me that maybe I didn't go back and revisit it over and over again, but I see how it shaped my thinking in seminary, how it shaped my ministry, and hopefully as a father and husband too. So it was just so encouraging, and I'm grateful for it.
All right, so the book is 20 years old.
Yeah. I
know it's been 11 years for y'all, since, so not quite that long. But what do you think about this book as it is now? It has attained its milestone of the 20th year. Do you think, what's your estimate of its value now and going forward?
Yeah, I think honestly it's just only becoming more relevant. Just the thought I had after getting OCD therapy is, I was like, I feel like our whole society needs to relearn, especially just in the pandemic and the polarization and just so many and just increasing mental health challenges. It's like we need to relearn like risk tolerance and competence. And at the end of the book, when you talk more about kind of the relational context of knower and known, and not objectifying things, and even as we try to tolerate and understand people's differences, I think in society it's become so easy to just polarize, like, oh, those people that have no idea what they're talking about, like they're just completely wrong. There's just no there's this, it's very fear-based, I guess. I just see a lot of fear in our society, and I think one of the most empowering things about looking at knowing this way is the the rejection of certainty and the embrace of competence. It just tones down the fear, and it's like, okay, like we can figure these things out, and there's and I just think we've lived in a time of fear for a long time, and now kind of thinking what you said about social media and all that stuff, like the downside, it has amazing benefits, but the downside is we are constantly bombarded with all the things in the world all the time. And I think just actually you had a part in the book that I had kind of forgotten about, but it said, it was like, by not taking on everything, we figure out like what we're responsible for and like what we can do. I'm not phrasing it very well, but it's like, you know, I think sometimes in our society now we feel like, oh my gosh, there's all these problems we have to like, and it's just paralyzing. You're like, I don't know what to do, or, you know, there's this limitless choice, but just figuring out our place and what we can confidently take responsibility for and, you know, lay out for, like, I think it just leads to better solutions to a lot of problems that there are in the world, because I don't think you can really do anything truly productive from a place of fear and rigidity and and I think the standard of knowledge as certainty or just leads to that and just gets in the way of finding solutions. And and I think, and then also just as a counterpoint to the sometimes collapse into complete skepticism, it's like, we can't know anything, you know, like it doesn't really matter what you think or believe, and it's like, well, it's not always true. Like, I mean, and so I think it's also just a source of hope, because I think I just noticed among a lot of people, and myself included, I definitely struggle with this, just kind of this sense of like despair sometimes at problems in the world and things like that, and just how we're going to get through any of it. And it's like, no, there is hope. Like, there is, it's not easy, but I think if we can embrace this less rigid or extreme black and white vision of either certainty or there's no knowledge at all, and
it's good.
Yeah. So
thank you. Troy.
Yeah, I think, and you're saying it, Mary, when you wrote the book, so 20 years ago, that had been 2 years after 9/11, and now the other watershed moment with the pandemic. I mean, these are generational defining moments. And my experience has been how much people want to grab a hold of what was. And because I think there's certainty in what was. There's a sense in which I know and am comfortable with, you know, the economy and the government and religious life as it was, my relationships as they were. And I don't want to ever, I can't walk into the future and the uncertainty of the future, because I'd rather hold on to this quasi certainty of what was. And I think we saw that over the last 3 years and even a little bit before that. And I think obviously the pandemic and the shift that's happened in the globe has been that tipping point where if modernism and postmodernism were kind of blurring, I think this was one of those hard and fast lines that propelled us into facing it head on culturally. That some of the things that were going on in academia behind the scenes, now it's like everybody's talking about objective truth and fake news and who can you trust and who has authority and all these things that people were questioning in philosophy for decades. And now it's right in the forefront. And again, the impetus is either to jump all the way, as you said, Mary, to skepticism and, well, my truth is my truth, relativism, make it whatever you want, you get to be God and define it for what you want. Or no, I'm going to go back to this and hold on to that and objective truth and, you know, hard and fast things. And so and picking this up over the last couple of days was kind of like a breath of fresh air to feel like this is the moment we're in. And as a minister personally, you know, I get to wrestle in the awkwardness of people not knowing how to think, how to know, how do I know what is true? Well, you saw it on the internet, you know, it was a meme on Facebook, so it has to be true. But I mean, so it's interesting, and the interpersonal difference that makes. And I define you by your stance. I define you by your, you know, viewpoint on these things. And I mean, it's so much richer than that. And I say this to our church all the time, and I hope this for my family and my life. It's like, I don't want us to get caught in that place. I don't want us to miss this moment because we're either too busy leaping decades ahead or getting stuck in what was. I want to sit with the awkward blurriness of what is right now and realize it's never going to be the same that it was. And I can't also then turn around and say I know for certain what will be. So I think, I mean, this was so timely, and I really hope and pray that this line of epistemology and thinking about thinking, people start to talk about it as a third way in a world that's very polarized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, guys, it's so good to be with you. And I love it that you're so much younger than I am. And, you know, I just love your, when I think of your lines of influence too, the people that are hearing you and that you're involved with. And I'm just grateful to you for kind of living this out and carrying it on. And so that's very cool. And I hope a whole lot of people watch this video.
Oh.
Everything that you've said is wonderful. And so as we wrap up, do you have any little parting shot before we sign off? Besides, it's so great to be a threesome again.
I know.
No, I totally agree.
Have you said it all, or?
Maybe. I mean, no, that's never possible. But
right. There's sometimes I just wonder what Jeff is up to. How your mechanic.
You know, when I have a plane tickets for St. Louis, and I'm going to see if I can go see him.
Oh, awesome!
Take his picture.
Yeah,
I quite see me videoing him, you know, but I thought about running around after him with a camera, but I don't know how he would feel about that. But I know he's still there because my daughter takes my daughter and son-in-law take their cars there. So
amazing.
Jeff rides. Jeff lives and rides.
Yeah. No, I guess my only parting shot is like, you know, I really hope people read this book, but I also hope they read the next books you wrote, because it was kind of hard to try to limit myself to like, okay, I'm just focusing on this book, and especially I think helping with your next book after that. It just gets, I mean, honestly, just seeing the progression of your work, like it really does just get richer and deeper and even more powerful as it goes. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Troy.
Dr. Meek, thank you so much for this time and allowing us to share. It's been wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. A lot. All right, you guys, God bless, and God bless everybody out there. And I hope I see you too and everybody else very soon.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Take care.